Come on!
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today I'm glad to announce that there are two major comebacks here in the world. Number one is Blade Runner is back, and number two is So Am I. Now let me just say that the real George Massey could not be here to do this review, but you needn't worry because I am a replicant of him. You won't know the difference. More human than human is me. Special thanks to the Tyrell Corporation for making me so very, very authentic. Anyway, on a serious note, Blade Runner 2049 is out and it's clearly already well loved. People are celebrating it and I've seen it and it's a good film. Alright, it's a good film. Let me be honest, let me be open. It's good, I enjoyed it, but just let's get one thing clear. It's not as good as Blade Runner, okay? It's not as good as Blade Runner at all. It's a good addition, it's a good attempt, it's a good sequel, and I suppose people are really happy about it in part just because at least it's very, very clear that the director of the film is passionate about Blade Runner and is doing his best to take this world seriously. And that's good because it's so common that we get sequels that are just kind of crap.
This is getting out of control!
I've never seen Job like that before.
You've got to stop Job before it's too late.
But this feels like a labour of love by a fan, and that is to its credit, but it is also to its discredit, because to me, anyway, it did feel exactly like that. It felt like a fan's interpretation of what a Blade Runner sequel could be or should be. Now, the great things about the movie are kind of obvious things. It looks excellent, the music is really, really good, stuff like that. But to be fair, the only reason they're so good is number one, because it is based upon the visuals of one of the most visually breathtaking films of all time. So if the visuals in this weren't amazing, considering the original was made in 1982 and it's now 2017, like, the visuals should be amazing, so that wasn't a surprise. And that being said, the visuals are not as amazing in this as they were in the original Blade Runner. There were certain moments where I thought, wow, that looks great, but the original Blade Runner is one of my favourite films, and whenever I watch that movie, be it on a small screen or a cinema where I'm lucky enough to have seen it, I literally am blown away, mesmerised by the visuals of the original. And this, I was like, that looks really amazing, but it's CGI, you know. And I was kind of thinking that a lot. Oh, that's really impressive, but I can tell that it's like, you know, a prop and stuff. So it doesn't have the grit. It doesn't have the kind of palpable quality of the original. It doesn't have the dirt. It's actually quite clean by comparison. The original is like very dark, very black, but very busy. This is much more stark. It's a bit kind of clear. It's more white really than dark. You see white skies, you see junkyards that are outside of the city, you see this kind of desert land, which is interesting, but in some ways it still didn't quite feel like the same Blade Runner world as the original.
I need you, Dex. This is a bad one. The worst yet. I need the old Blade Runner.
And the other good thing is the music, but again, it's obviously going to be good because Blade Runner has one of the most amazing soundtracks of all time, and this is leeching off of it, expanding it a bit, and it's not as good. Like, there's one moment where you get some of the sounds from the original, and that's the best stuff in the movie. So I think there is a bit of a problem here where people in their initial viewing are watching the movie and just being like, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, it's Blade Runner, it looks like Blade Runner, it sounds like Blade Runner, and it's sort of like you can't do any wrong. But if you kind of penetrate a little bit deeper, there are problems, there are flaws. The script is not that good. The story is good, but the script isn't that good. Some of the dialogue is very, very clunky. For example, it begins with the Blade Runner character Ryan Gosling going to get his very first replicant of the film, and instead of a usual interrogation to discover if the person he's interrogating is a replicant, he just kind of goes there knowing that this guy is a replicant and Gosling is gonna kill the guy. And it's done in this really formal way where Gosling's sort of like, well, do you mind if I like kill you now? You know, that's kind of the tone of it, and the guy, the replicant, is annoyed and the replicant fights him, and it's way more Hollywood than the original Blade Runner, because it's like, okay, so it had to open with an action scene, it had to open with a fight. And I was sitting in the cinema thinking, why the fucking hell would Gosling be like, so don't make this awkward, let me just kill you? Like, that is ridiculous. Like, the finale of Blade Runner is how replicants don't want to die, how they will fight for their lives, and the whole point of the original Blade Runner story for them is that they are trying to get more life. At no point do they just back down and go, oh really, we're replicants, so you can just kill us then. And this begins with the Blade Runner presuming that it's going to be really easy. Like, it's just really dumb, and it seems like it was just written in to allow a fight to happen. So that there were problems with the script immediately. And then there were other things, like when Gosling gets into that hotel where Deckard has been hiding out for all these years, at one point he hits a tripwire, right, and then something blows up, but it's like down the hall or around the corner, and it's like, that's the worst tripwire ever. Who the fucking hell would create a tripwire that blows up something on the other side of the building? Like, the whole point is to blow up the guy who's broken in. I mean, what if you're in the hotel sitting over there, alright, drinking your fucking brandy, and then someone breaks in, and when they hit the tripwire, you blow up? Like, it was fucking stupid. Like, it was just like, again, style over substance. Like, this world, it aesthetically is interesting, but scientifically, it doesn't all add up. You would not do that. I was just like, what? What? Shouldn't Gosling be blown up? Not something around the fucking corridor blowing up? Like, just really dumb. On top of that, there is a kind of pretentious quality to the style of the movie. Now, in the original, there's a lot of characterization. In all of the integral characters, they have development and they have nuance, and there are kind of quirky characters, and there are the kind of slightly crazy characters, whether they're human or replicants, or who knows, sometimes you don't know if it's a human or a replicant. But in this, everybody in the movie has a kind of Ryan Gosling tone. Everyone in the movie has this kind of just stark, stoic, calm personality. Everything is a little bit too kind of cold when it comes to any humanity. And it's like people often remember Blade Runner for being very dark, very drab, very film noir, but within that world are these interesting characters. And this is almost like the characters are how you remember the Blade Runner world. Like, the characters themselves are colourless, and I think that's a bit of a flaw, and it's this issue where the characters are so serious that they can almost become annoying, and certainly inhuman. And what's interesting is the only person with any real humanity in the film is Harrison Ford. He's the only one who plays his character like a bit of a human, but everyone else sort of plays the part the same way Ryan Gosling does, which is like this. Oh, really? Wow. Okay. And then you've got Jared Leto, the same thing. You don't know pain. You will know. Jared Leto's assistant replicant woman has this thing where she cries. She cries in 2 scenes in the film, and it's sort of like, oh, look at this, isn't it cool and artistic that, like, she's crying, wow. And it just feels like the director or the actress is like, oh look, she can cry on cue, let's put that in, that's really cool. But it's fucking irritating. Like, in the beginning, not giving anything away, but there's a bit where you see a replicant get cut, okay, and the woman cries, okay, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess she's a replicant. She doesn't like to see replicants harmed, okay, except it's her job to go and take out certain people, and at one point she's like killing a human, and then she's crying again, and it's like, well, like, what? There's no logic to her tears. There's nothing in that that's like, oh, this is an actual character development, a character arc. It's like, if you're gonna get fucking upset at a replicant getting hurt, then why are you getting upset when you're the one hurting people? It doesn't make sense. It just feels like style, and that's it. It's just happening because it seems like a stylish thing to do, to have a tear roll down her face, as opposed to actually having any personal relevance, or relevance to the character, or relevance to the story. It's just kind of pointless stuff.
I still love you.
And I actually felt like that with the visuals in general. The city stuff, which is actually quite minor, in terms of the whole movie, the city stuff, there isn't that much of it, but you see a lot of interiors, you see inside lots of buildings, and it was interesting, but it was very stark, very empty, not like the original Blade Runner, which is dense, and it's cluttered, and it's busy. It's got kind of an Art Deco feel, or almost like an Art Deco in decay kind of a feeling. Maybe like the original Metropolis movie, but in decay, in this beautiful dystopian landscape. This movie had that on the outside of the city, but once you got inside the buildings, it actually felt like a different world, and there were things in it again that just felt like some art student's attempt at like abstract art or modern art. Like, there are lots of scenes inside buildings where you see like water reflections on the walls, and there's a little bit of that in the original Blade Runner, but it's very subtle. It's not like the whole thing is just like, look, it's like a totally blank slate and there's like lots of water ripples on the walls. Isn't that cool and weird and futuristic? And it's like, it's not that interesting. People seem to love it, but compared to a lot of the original Blade Runner interiors, it's actually quite bland, some of those interior designs. The outside designs are cool, but of course they're fucking cool because they're based on Blade Runner. You get other things like a junkyard. That's a cool sequence, but it's not that imaginative. It's just a big fucking junkyard. It's not as amazing as people say it is, but it's good, okay? It's a good movie. And as a huge fan of Blade Runner, the original, it's one of my favourite films for very, very many reasons. I did not walk out of Blade Runner 2049 with any kind of anger or detest or frustration. I walked out and just thought it was a good attempt. It was really, really a good attempt, and it was a labour of love, and I was never expecting a Blade Runner sequel, and I was certainly never expecting a good one, and I think it would be virtually impossible for someone in modern Hollywood to make a sequel and get it completely right. So I wasn't expecting that. In fact, I was actually expecting it to be shit.
They know you're here.
So I went in with very low expectations, and I came out of the cinema pleasantly surprised. But no, it was not as good as the original Blade Runner, alright? Review over. Blade Runner 2049, good. Blade Runner 1982, better, a lot better. Blade Runner 2049, well done, worth watching, go and see it. It's a good science fiction movie with a good story, and it's got a few good surprises along the way. Anyway, that's that. I'm me, you're you. I'm glad Blade Runner's back, and I'm glad to be back on YouTube as well. And I'm glad to see you too. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.